The mark of destiny. The scar burned like a living thing beneath Sarah Blackwood's sleeve. She'd learned to hide it. 23 years of pulling fabric over the strange crescent-shaped mark that wrapped around her left forearm like a brand. Most days, she could pretend it was just a birthmark, something ordinary that didn't pulse with heat whenever the full moon rose. But tonight, standing in the grand ballroom of the Silver Pine estate with 300 wolves watching her, pretending was impossible. The annual gathering wasn't meant for her kind, packless, orphaned. A wolf without a lineage was barely a wolf at all in their world. Yet here she stood, serving champagne to creatures who wouldn't meet her eyes, whose conversations died the moment she approached their circles. More wine. The command came from a she-wolf dripping in diamonds, her lip curled in distaste. Sarah's fingers tightened on the bottle, but she poured without spilling a drop. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when this catering job was the only thing keeping her studio apartment and her night classes within reach. She'd clawed her way from the foster system into nursing school, and she wouldn't let wolves with silver spoons and golden bloodlines take that from her. The mark flared suddenly, white-hot. Sarah gasped, nearly dropping the bottle. The sensation wasn't pain exactly. It was recognition. A tuning fork struck somewhere deep in her marrow. Every nerve ending screamed a single word. Here. The ballroom fell silent. She looked up, and the world tilted. He stood at the top of the marble staircase, and Sarah understood immediately why conversations had stopped, why even the orchestra had faltered. Kyle Thornwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, commanded attention like gravity commanded the stars. 6'4" of lethal grace wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly income. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and harder promises. But it was his eyes that stole her breath, silver as mercury, ancient as mountains, and fixed directly on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He descended the stairs with predatory fluidity, each step measured, purposeful. The crowd parted for him like a sea before Moses. Sarah's instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything but stand there trembling with an empty wine bottle clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Kael stopped 3 feet away. His nostrils flared slightly, and something flickered across his face. Shock, perhaps, or recognition. Without breaking eye contact, he reached up and unbuttoned his left cuff, rolling back the expensive fabric to reveal his forearm. Sarah's world shattered. There, on his sun-bronzed skin, was a mark identical to hers. The same crescent moon. The same impossible burn. Impossible, Kael breathed, his voice rough velvet that raised goosebumps across her skin. His eyes had darkened to storm cloud gray. You shouldn't exist. The mark on Sarah's arm blazed brighter, and she realized with dawning horror that everyone in the ballroom could see it now, glowing through her sleeve like a beacon. Whispers erupted, shocked, scandalized, afraid, because matching marks meant only one thing in their world. The Alpha King had found his true mate, and she was nobody. What happens when destiny chooses the wrong wolf? Follow Sarah's journey as she navigates a world that never wanted her, and an Alpha King bound to her by forces neither can deny. Drop a comment if you're ready for this wild ride. The King's Decree. Sarah's legs wouldn't move. The ballroom had erupted into chaos around her. Wolves whispering behind manicured hands, phones appearing to capture the impossible scene. the diamond-draped she-wolf from earlier openly gaping. But Sarah could only stare at Cale Thornwood's forearm, at the mark that mirrored her own shame, her secret, her curse. This couldn't be happening. Soulmate bonds were the stuff of legends, rare as lightning strikes, and they certainly didn't connect alpha kings to packless orphans who served drinks for minimum wage. "Show me." Cale's command cut through the noise like a blade. Sarah's throat tightened. "I don't—" "That wasn't a request." His silver eyes held hers, and beneath the authority, she caught something else. Desperation? Fear? "Please." The please undid her. With shaking hands, Sarah set down the wine bottle and pushed up her sleeve. The crescent mark blazed against her pale skin, pulsing in perfect synchronization with his. The moment the air touched it fully, power crackled between them, visible, electric, undeniable. Cale sucked in a sharp breath. Before Sarah could react, he'd closed the distance between them, his fingers hovering just above her mark without quite touching. Heat radiated from the space between their skin, magnetic and terrifying, and 23 years, he murmured, almost to himself. "I've worn this mark for 23 years, and every oracle, every seer, every ancient text said my mate was dead, that she'd never been born." His gaze snapped to hers, fierce and searching. "Where have you been?" "Here." The word came out smaller than she'd intended. "I've always been here." "In Silverpine." Something dangerous flashed across Cale's face. "Someone hid you." Before Sarah could process that statement, a woman materialized at Cale's shoulder, tall, elegant, wearing an emerald gown that matched her cold eyes. "Cale, darling, what's the holdup?" "The council is waiting for your—" She stopped mid-sentence as she registered the scene, her expression transforming from confusion to icy fury. "No." "Vivian." Cale's tone carried a warning. "No," Vivian repeated, louder now. She was beautiful in the way poisonous flowers were beautiful, and she looked at Sarah like something scraped off her designer heel. "This is absurd. She's obviously some con artist, some packless nobody trying to—" "Careful." Cale's single word dropped the temperature 10 degrees. "You're speaking about my mate." The ballroom went silent again. Vivian's face drained of color, but her eyes remained sharp, calculating. "Your mate? Cale, we've been engaged for 6 months. The alliance between our territories is now void." Vivian's hand flew to her throat. "You can't be serious. Look at her. She's wearing a catering uniform. She has no pack, no lineage, no—" "She has me." Kyle's voice carried absolute finality. He still hadn't touched Sarah, but she felt claimed nonetheless, marked by something far more permanent than the crescent on her skin. "And anyone who questions that will answer to the Alpha King." Sarah's head spun. This was moving too fast, spiraling beyond her control. "Wait," she managed, her voice stronger now. "I don't even know you. I never asked for—" "The mark doesn't ask permission." Kyle finally looked at her again, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "It simply is. You feel it, don't you? The pull?" She did. God help her, she did. Every cell in her body strained toward him like a compass finding north. But desire wasn't destiny, and chemistry wasn't choice. "I have a life," Sarah said, lifting her chin. "School, a job. Plans that don't include being claimed by some alpha king I've never met. A ghost of a smile touched Kael's lips. Some alpha king? You know what I mean? I do. His expression sobered. But we need to talk. Privately. There are things about your mark, about why you were hidden, that put you in danger. Serious danger. More danger than being suddenly mated to you? Yes. The single word carried such gravity that Sarah's defiance wavered. Around them, she was aware of phones recording, of wolves whispering, of Vivian's venomous stare burning into her back. One conversation, Kael said quietly. That's all I'm asking. After that, if you truly want nothing to do with me, I'll... He paused, something like pain crossing his features. I'll find a way to respect that. Sarah studied him, this powerful stranger who wore her mark, who'd just destroyed his own engagement without hesitation, who looked at her like she was both his salvation and his doom. Every instinct screamed that walking away was the smart choice, the safe choice. But the mark on her arm burned with recognition, and despite everything, Sarah had never been good at playing it safe. One conversation, she agreed. Then I'm going back to my real life. Kael's eyes flashed. We'll see. The Alpha King just claimed his mate in front of everyone. But Sarah Blackwood isn't interested in being claimed. What secrets is he hiding about her mark? And who's been keeping them apart? Comment below if you think Sarah should run or stay. Truths and threats. Kael's private study was nothing like Sarah expected. She'd imagined something cold and imposing, all dark wood and mounted trophies, a throne room for an apex predator. Instead, she found herself in a space that was almost comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, packed with volumes that looked actually read, rather than decoratively arranged. A stone fireplace crackled with genuine warmth. Through massive windows, the forest stretched into darkness, ancient pines standing sentinel beneath the full moon. Sarah hovered near the door, hyper-aware that she was alone with him now. No crowd, no witnesses, just her racing heartbeat and the man who'd upended her entire existence in under 10 minutes. Kael poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. Scotch? I'm 23. The drinking age doesn't apply in wolf territories. He held out the glass, amusement flickering across his features. Besides, you'll want it for what I'm about to tell you. Sarah took the glass but didn't drink. Start talking. Kael settled into one of the leather chairs by the fireplace, gesturing for her to take the other. When she remained standing, he sighed. Sarah, that's your name, isn't it? Sarah Blackwood? How did you... I know everything about everyone in this territory. It's my job. He took a measured sip of scotch. You've been in Silverpine for 8 years. Before that, foster homes scattered across 3 states. Before that... He paused, his expression darkening. Nothing. Your records begin at age 15, as if you materialized from thin air. Sarah's grip tightened on the glass. I was found wandering near the Canadian border. Hypothermic, no memory of how I got there. The authorities assumed I'd been kidnapped or... You weren't kidnapped. Kael leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the firelight casting shadows across his angular face. You were hidden. By someone powerful enough to erase 15 years of your existence and suppress your wolf until you were old enough to survive alone. The room tilted. Suppress my wolf? What are you talking about? I have a wolf. I've shifted since I was 16. A weak wolf, barely present. You've probably never been able to fully shift, have you? Never felt the full strength of what you should be. Sarah's silence was answer enough. That's because someone bound your power. Kael's voice was gentle now, almost careful. The same person who hid you from me. Who made sure our marks wouldn't call to each other until you were old enough to potentially defend yourself. Why would anyone do that? Because, Kael said quietly, true mate marks between alphas are prophesied bonds, and our mark specifically. He rolled up his sleeve again, tracing the crescent with one finger. This pattern appears in exactly one ancient text, a prophecy about 2 wolves who would either save or destroy the entire northern territories. Sarah barked out a laugh that sounded slightly hysterical even to her own ears. You're insane. I'm a nursing student who can barely afford groceries. I'm not destroying anything except maybe my sleep schedule. You don't believe in prophecies? I believe in student loans and survival. That's it. Kael studied her for a long moment. Your parents were Marcus and Elena Blackwood. The glass slipped from Sarah's nerveless fingers, scotch splashing across the expensive rug. She barely noticed. How? My parents died in a car accident when I was a baby. That's all I know. They were murdered. Kael's voice was flat, factual, devastating. Your father was Alpha of the Blackwood Pack, one of the most powerful bloodlines in the Northern Territories. Your mother was a direct descendant of the Moon Goddess's first children. Together, they represented a union that threatened the established order, challenged centuries of political alliances and territorial arrangements. Sarah's legs wouldn't hold her anymore. She sank into the opposite chair, her mind reeling. That's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm the heir to 2 of the most ancient bloodlines in existence. Kael's mercury eyes held hers. And the moment your mark activated tonight, every wolf who spent the last 23 years hoping you were dead now knows exactly where to find you. Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through Sarah's shock. You're saying someone killed my parents to prevent... What? Some prophecy? To prevent change. To maintain the status quo. Kael stood, moving to the window with the fluid grace that marked him as a predator. Your parents' union would have reshaped pack alliances, redistributed power, challenged the council's authority. There were wolves, powerful wolves, who couldn't allow that. And you think those same wolves will come after me? I don't think. I know. He turned back to face her. Which is why you need my protection. There it was, the real reason for this private conversation. Sarah straightened in her chair, channeling every ounce of stubborn pride that had gotten her through foster care and poverty, and 1,000 moments when giving up would have been easier. I don't need protection. I need the truth, and then I need you to leave me alone. The truth is that you're in danger every moment you're not under my shield. Your shield comes with strings. I saw how you looked at me out there, like I was something you owned. You're my mate. Frustration cracked through Kael's composure. That's not ownership. It's a bond I didn't choose, Sarah interrupted. A mark I didn't ask for. And now you're telling me I'm some prophesied heir who's been hidden away like Rapunzel, and I'm just supposed to accept that? Trust you? Yes. Why? Because some mark says we're destined? Because you're the Alpha King and you're used to people obeying you? Sarah stood, meeting his gaze with all the defiance she could muster. I've survived 23 years without you, without anyone. I can keep surviving. Kael crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel his heat, smell pine and winter on his skin. You're right. You have survived. You're clearly strong, stubborn, and entirely too brave for your own good. Something softened in his expression. But survival and living aren't the same thing. And whether you accept it or not, we're bound now. Your enemies are my enemies. Your fights are my fights. I didn't ask to be your fight. No, he agreed quietly. But you are anyway. They stood there in the firelight, destiny's mark burning on both their arms, while outside the study door, Sarah could hear voices, raised, angry, demanding. Someone wanted an audience with the Alpha King, someone who sounded a lot like Vivian. Kael's jaw tightened. It started already. They'll come for you with politics first, try to discredit you, delegitimize our bond. Then, when that fails. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Sarah thought of her tiny apartment, her night classes, the life she'd built one careful brick at a time. She thought of the mark on her arm that had always made her different, wrong, other. And she thought of parents she'd never known, murdered for daring to love across bloodlines. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll stay here for 1 week while you prove what you're telling me is true. But after that, if I want to leave, you let me go. No arguments. No Alpha King commands. Kael's eyes searched hers. And if I prove it's true? Then we'll talk about what comes next. Sarah held out her hand. Do we have a deal? He stared at her outstretched hand like it was a lifeline in a trap all at once. Then, slowly, he clasped it in his own. The moment their skin connected, power exploded through the bond, electric, overwhelming, undeniable. Sarah gasped. Kael's grip tightened. 1 week, he agreed, his voice rough. But Sarah? You should know that I've never been good at letting go of what's mine. Sarah's just agreed to 1 week with the Alpha King, but enemies are already circling. What secrets will Kael reveal? And can Sarah trust the man destiny chose for her? Hit that follow button to find out what happens next. The Council's judgment. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through windows too large to belong to her apartment. For one disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all crashed back. The ballroom, the mark, Kael Thornwood's mercury eyes as he'd told her parents were murdered. She sat up in the massive 4-poster bed, still wearing yesterday's catering uniform, and tried to process that her life had fundamentally changed in the span of a single evening. A knock at the door made her jump. Miss Blackwood? A woman's voice, professional and careful. The Alpha King requests your presence at breakfast. I've brought appropriate clothing. Sarah opened the door to find a middle-aged she-wolf with kind eyes and an armful of garments that probably cost more than Sarah's car. I'm Margaret, the house manager. These should fit. The Alpha King was quite specific about the measurements. Heat crept up Sarah's neck. He measured me with his eyes. Margaret's lips twitched. Alpha Kings tend to be observant. Shall I help you dress? 20 minutes later, Sarah barely recognized herself in the mirror. The deep blue cashmere sweater and dark jeans weren't ostentatious, but the quality was unmistakable. She looked like someone who belonged in Kyle's world, which was exactly what she wasn't. Margaret led her through hallways lined with portraits of stern-faced wolves, all of them probably judging the packless orphan in borrowed clothes. They emerged into a sunlit dining room where Kyle sat reading what looked like a report, a tablet propped against his coffee cup. He'd traded last night's suit for jeans and a black Henley that did illegal things to his shoulders. He looked up as she entered, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. "You slept well?" "No." Sarah took the seat across from him, noting the spread of food that could feed her for a week. "I had nightmares about prophecies and murdered parents." "Fair enough." Kyle dismissed Margaret with a subtle nod, waiting until they were alone before continuing. "I've called an emergency council meeting for this afternoon. You'll need to attend." Sarah had just reached for the coffee pot. Her hand froze. "Absolutely not." "They need to see you, to acknowledge the bond. I didn't agree to be paraded in front of some council." "Sarah." Kyle set down his tablet with deliberate care. "The moment our marks connected, you became a political entity, whether you like it or not. The council governs all pack law in the Northern Territories. They need to formally recognize our bond, which means they need to meet you." "Or what? They'll declare it invalid?" Hope flickered in her chest. "Would that free us from this situation?" Something dark crossed Kyle's face. "No bond marked by the goddess can be invalidated, but they could declare you unworthy of the position, strip you of any rights or protections that come with being the Alpha King's mate. They could even demand I reject you." The word reject landed like a physical blow, though Sarah couldn't explain why. She barely knew this man. She didn't want this bond. So why did the thought of him rejecting her make her chest ache? "Would you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "If they demanded it?" Kyle's mercury eyes held hers with unsettling intensity. "I've waited 23 years for you, Sarah Blackwood. I'm not walking away because some counselors are uncomfortable with change." The certainty in his voice should have annoyed her. Instead, it sent warmth pooling in her stomach. Sarah grabbed a piece of toast to give her hands something to do. "Tell me about this council." 7 representatives from the most powerful packs. They've held their positions for decades, most of them. They value tradition, stability, bloodlines. His jaw tightened. "Everything you're not." "You really know how to make a girl feel special." "I didn't mean—" Kyle stopped, recognition flickering across his features. "You're baiting me." "Maybe." Sarah bit into her toast. "You're tense." "Worried. I figured making you defensive might get you to speak freely." "Manipulative and clever." Despite everything, Kyle almost smiled. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" "I survived foster care, poverty, and a catering shift at your fancy party. I'm definitely trouble." The almost smile faded. "I'm serious about the council, Sarah. They're going to test you, push you, try to find reasons you're unworthy. Vivian's father sits on the council. He's not going to accept his daughter's broken engagement lightly." "The diamond-draped she-wolf from last night?" "Vivian Ashford. We were engaged for political alliance. Her pack controls the Eastern Territories, and the marriage would have solidified my hold on disputed border regions." Kyle's expression was carefully neutral. "Obviously, that's no longer relevant." "Obviously." Sarah studied him over her coffee cup. "Were you in love with her?" "No." "Did she love you?" "Vivian loves power. I was a means to an end. Kael met her gaze steadily. But she's dangerous when thwarted. She'll be your primary adversary on the council. Great. A scorned almost fiancé with political power. What could go wrong? Before Kael could respond, the dining room doors burst open. A man strode in, silver-haired, radiating authority, with eyes that could freeze lava. He took one look at Sarah, and his face transformed into a mask of disgust. "So it's true," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The Alpha King has bound himself to packless trash." Kael was on his feet instantly, power rolling off him in waves that made the chandelier shudder. "Careful, Councillor Ashford. That's my mate you're addressing." "That's exactly the problem." Vivian's father, because of course this was Vivian's father, turned his cold gaze on Kael. "Emergency session has been moved up. The council convenes in 1 hour. We will determine whether this girl has any legitimate claim to stand at your side. The goddess herself marked our bond. The goddess also gave us free will and judgment." Ashford's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "We'll see what the council decides." He left in a swirl of expensive cologne and barely contained fury. In the silence that followed, Sarah realized her hands were shaking. "He's going to destroy me in there, isn't he? He's going to try." Kael moved to her side, and this time when he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. His touch anchored her, steady and sure. "But he doesn't know what I know about you." "Which is?" "That you're a survivor." Kael's thumb traced small circles on her palm, the gesture both soothing and electric. "That you've been fighting your whole life, and you're still standing. That you're braver than most wolves twice your age." His voice dropped, intimate. "And that you're mine, whether you've fully accepted it yet or not." The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it kindled something fierce in Sarah's chest. Not rebellion, but recognition. "I haven't agreed to be claimed." "I know." Kael's smile was slight but genuine. "That's what makes you perfect." 1 hour later, Sarah stood before the council and understood exactly what Kael had meant about tests. The council chamber was designed for intimidation, a semicircle of elevated seats where 7 wolves looked down on whoever stood in the center. The space was deliberately isolating, deliberately small. Sarah felt like prey in an arena, circled by predators who'd already decided she was unworthy. "State your full name." This from Councillor Ashford, who sat in the center position like a judge at an execution. "Sarah Blackwood." "Pack affiliation?" "None." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another councillor, a sharp-eyed woman with iron-gray hair, leaned forward. "And yet you claim the Alpha King as your mate?" "I'm not claiming anything," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "The mark appeared on its own. I didn't ask for this." "How convenient," Vivian's voice rang out. She sat in the gallery behind the council, elegant in emerald green, her smile venomous. "A nobody orphan suddenly appears with a matching mark, just as Kael is poised to solidify the most important alliance in Northern Territory's history." "Convenient for who?" Sarah shot back. "This has destroyed my life more than enhanced it." "Your life." Ashford's contempt was palpable. What life could a packless wolf possibly have that matters compared to the needs of entire territories? Kyle, standing to Sarah's right in what she now recognized as a position of support rather than dominance, growled low in his chest. "Counselor." "Let her answer, Alpha King." The iron-haired woman, Counselor Reeves, Sarah had learned, studied Sarah with hawkish intensity. "If she's to be your mate, she must speak for herself." Every eye in the chamber fixed on Sarah. In that moment, she could have retreated, could have played small, could have been what they expected, a meek, grateful orphan who knew her place. Instead, she lifted her chin and met Counselor Ashford's gaze directly. "You're right," she said clearly. "I am packless. I have no lineage I can prove, no political connections, no power base." She paused, letting the words hang. "But I also have no debts. No alliances that compromise my judgment. No territory to defend at the expense of others. Maybe that's exactly what the goddess knew the Northern Territories needed. Someone who doesn't give a damn about your centuries of political games." Silence crashed through the chamber. Then Vivian laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "How delightfully naive. You think not caring about politics makes you qualified to stand beside an Alpha King? I think caring too much about politics is exactly what got Sarah's parents killed." Kael's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Every counselor went still. "Or did you think I wouldn't investigate? That I wouldn't dig into exactly who benefited from the death of Marcus and Elena Blackwood 23 years ago?" Ashford's face had gone carefully blank. "Ancient history. Is it?" Kael moved to stand beside Sarah, a unified front. "Because the territorial agreements signed the month after their deaths look remarkably favorable to certain families currently represented on this council. You're making dangerous accusations, Alpha King," but Ashford's voice had lost some of its certainty. "I'm making observations." Kael's power filled the chamber, undeniable, absolute. "Sarah Blackwood is my mate, marked by the goddess, heir to two of the most ancient bloodlines in our history. The council will acknowledge our bond, or I will dissolve this council and rule by Alpha right alone." The threat hung in the air like a drawn blade. Counselor Reeves broke the silence first. "A vote, then." All in favor of acknowledging the bond between Alpha King Kael Thornwood and Sarah Blackwood? 4 hands rose. 3 did not. "Motion carries," Reeves announced. "The bond is acknowledged." Relief flooded through Sarah, followed immediately by terror, because acknowledgement meant acceptance meant this was real, permanent, irrevocable. Kael's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "I've got you," the gesture said. And despite everything, despite the strangers staring at her, despite the life she'd just lost, despite the danger she couldn't yet see, Sarah squeezed back. The council has spoken, but enemies are still circling. What secrets is Kael keeping about Sarah's parents? And why does she feel safer beside a man she barely knows than she ever did alone? Comment if you're Team Kael or Team Sarah should run. Shadows in the dark. The attempt on Sarah's life came 3 days later. She'd almost started to relax. A dangerous mistake in hindsight. After the council meeting, Kael had installed her in rooms adjacent to his own, assigned guards she pretended not to notice, and given her space to process everything. Days fell into strange rhythms. Breakfast together, Kael disappearing into alpha business while Sarah explored the vast estate. Dinners where they talked like two people trying to know each other, rather than two wolves bound by destiny. She'd even called her nursing school, made excuses about a family emergency. Her apartment sat empty, her old life suspended, while this new reality unfolded around her. That third evening, Sarah decided to find the library Kael had mentioned. She'd dismissed her guards. They made her feel like a prisoner, and was wandering the eastern wing when she caught a scent that raised every hair on her neck. Wolfsbane. Barely detectable, but there. Sarah froze in the hallway, instinct screaming danger. The lights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging the corridor into darkness. Emergency lighting should have engaged. It didn't. She reached for her wolf, trying to shift, but the binding Kael had mentioned held firm. Her wolf was there but distant, muted, useless. Footsteps, coming from both directions. "Clever girl," a male voice purred from the darkness ahead. "Catching the wolfsbane?" "Most wouldn't have, with your wolf so suppressed." Sarah backed toward the wall, her heart hammering. "Who are you?" Someone who understands that prophecies are best left unfulfilled. A shape materialized from the shadows. A wolf she'd seen at the gathering. Someone unremarkable in the crowd. Now he radiated controlled violence, eyes gleaming amber in the dark. "Nothing personal, little Blackwood. But you're a disruption the territories can't afford." He lunged. Sarah dove sideways, muscle memory from years of foster home survival overriding panic. The assassin's claws raked air where she'd been. She scrambled to her feet, running blindly down the corridor, knowing more wolves were behind her, knowing she couldn't outrun trained killers. A hand caught her arm. Sarah screamed, lashing out with her elbow. It connected with something solid. Her attacker grunted but didn't let go, dragging her toward what she realized was a service stairwell. Escape route or execution site? Then she caught his scent. Pine and winter and something uniquely Kael. "It's me," he growled in her ear. "Don't fight me." Relief nearly buckled her knees. Kael pulled her into the stairwell, his body a shield between her and the corridor. 2 other wolves flanked them, his personal guards, she realized, weapons drawn. "How many?" one asked. "At least 3. Kael's voice was alpha command, steady despite the adrenaline Sarah could feel thrumming through his frame. "Wolfsbane in the ventilation system, power grid sabotaged." This was coordinated. "Inside job," the second guard confirmed. "Has to be." Which meant someone in Kael's own territory, in his own estate, wanted Sarah dead badly enough to commit treason. They moved through the stairwell in tense silence, descending to what Sarah assumed was the basement level. Kael kept her tucked close, one hand splayed across her back, and she was too shaken to protest the protectiveness. He led them into a fortified room that looked like a combination safe room and command center. Computer monitors lined one wall, weapons another. The door sealed with a hiss that suggested serious security measures. Only then did Kael turn to Sarah, his hands coming up to cup her face, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm..." Her voice broke. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shaking." His thumbs traced her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated they'd move this quickly." "Who's they?" "I don't know yet. But I will." Kael's mercury eyes had darkened to gunmetal, and for the first time, Sarah saw the predator beneath the gentleman. "And when I find them, there will be blood." One of the guards, a scarred wolf named Marcus, spoke up. "Perimeter's secure." "But Alpha, we need to talk about relocation. This estate is compromised." "Agreed." Kael's jaw was granite. "Ready the northern cabin. We move within the hour." "Wait." Sarah found her voice, pushed past the shock. "What about the other staff?" "Margaret? The kitchen wolves? If someone's using wolfsbane?" "Already being evacuated and checked." Kael's expression softened marginally. "You're thinking of others even now?" "I'm thinking that if someone's willing to poison an entire wing to get to me, collateral damage doesn't concern them." Sarah pulled back from his touch, needed space to think clearly. "This is because of the council meeting. Someone on that council doesn't want me alive. Ashford's the obvious suspect. Too obvious." Sarah paced the small room, her nursing school training kicking in. Assess, analyze, solve. "If Vivian's father killed me now, right after publicly opposing our bond, he'd be the first person investigated. It has to be someone else. Someone who voted for us." Kael's eyes sharpened. "You're saying one of our allies tried to kill you?" "I'm saying someone smart enough to coordinate this attack is smart enough to misdirect suspicion." Marcus and the other guard exchanged looks that suggested respect. Kael moved to the computer monitors, pulling up what looked like security footage. "We'll know soon enough. These cameras are on a separate system. They should have caught something." For 20 minutes they reviewed footage in tense silence. Sarah watched wolves she didn't recognize move through the estate, saw the moment the lights died, saw herself running through corridors. But the assassins themselves never appeared clearly on camera. They knew where the blind spots were. "Professional," Marcus muttered. "Military training, maybe rogue ops. Or council security," Kael countered darkly. "Who else would know this estate's layout so precisely?" A soft chime interrupted them. Kael checked his phone, and something in his expression made Sarah's stomach drop. "What is it?" "Message from Councillor Reeves." He showed her the screen. 3 council members dead. Poison at tonight's dinner meeting. Suspect Ashford's faction retaliating against Bond supporters. Territories on brink of civil war. Protect the girl. She's more valuable than she knows. Sarah's world tilted. 3 counselors? Dead? Those who voted for us. Kael's voice was hollow. "This isn't about killing you to prevent the prophecy. This is someone using you, using us, to destabilize the entire council, to start a war." Understanding crashed through Sarah like ice water. Your engagement to Vivian kept the territories balanced. Our bond disrupted that balance. Now someone's exploiting the chaos, pushing us toward civil war. Kael's fist slammed into the table, and the wood splintered under the force. While we're fighting each other, someone's consolidating power. Someone who doesn't want peace. Sarah looked at the screens, at the footage of her running for her life, and felt a strange calm settle over her. She'd spent her whole life running from danger, hiding from threats she didn't understand. But this was different. This wasn't just about her survival anymore. This was about the people who'd voted to acknowledge her bond. The counselors who'd died defending her right to exist beside Kael. The territories full of wolves who'd get caught in the crossfire of a civil war they didn't choose. She turned to Kael, and when she spoke, her voice was steady. We can't run. If we hide, if we let whoever's behind this keep pulling strings in the shadows, more people die. Sarah, I know what you're going to say, that I'm in danger, that your job is to protect me. She moved to stand directly in front of him, this alpha king who'd offered her everything. But you said it yourself. I'm part of a prophecy. Maybe that prophecy isn't about us. Maybe it's about what we choose to do when someone tries to destroy the territories through us. Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand, pressing it against his chest, where she could feel his heart thundering beneath her palm. You terrify me. Good. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. I terrify myself. If we do this, if we stay and fight, there's no going back. You'll be all in. Fully mine. Fully committed to this world, to this role. The question hung between them, weighted with everything they'd avoided discussing. Sarah thought about her apartment, her nursing school dreams, the simple life she'd built. Then she thought about 3 dead counselors, about her murdered parents, about a prophecy that had hidden her away for 23 years. Running hadn't saved her parents. Running hadn't protected those counselors. Maybe it was time to stop running. One condition, Sarah said. Name it. You stop treating me like something fragile. We're partners in this, or we're nothing. Khalil's answering smile was fierce and proud and entirely too attractive. Partners, then. He lifted her hand to his lips, and the kiss he pressed to her knuckles sent fire racing through the mate bond. Though I reserve the right to be annoyingly protective sometimes, I reserve the right to ignore you when you are. Fair enough? Marcus cleared his throat. Alpha? Orders? Kale straightened, and Sarah watched him transform from the man who'd just kissed her hand to the alpha king who commanded territories. We still move to the northern cabin. It's more defensible. But we don't hide. We investigate. We find who's behind this. His mercury eyes glinted dangerously. And we end them before they end us. And if it's someone on the council? The other guard asked. Then the council learns that you don't threaten my mate without consequences. Kyle's power filled the room, absolute authority that made even his own guards bare their throats in submission. Spread the word. Sarah Blackwood is under my protection. Anyone who moves against her moves against me. And I, his smile turned predatory, am not nearly as forgiving as she is. Someone's using Sarah and Kale to start a war, but they're done being pawns. As they dig deeper into the conspiracy, will the truth about Sarah's parents finally emerge? And can 2 wolves bound by destiny stand against forces that have controlled the territories for centuries? Drop a comment if you're ready for the final showdown. Prophecy's end. The northern cabin was less cabin and more fortress. Perched on a cliff overlooking the territories, it was all stone and steel, with sight lines for miles and defenses that would make a military bunker jealous. Sarah had expected to feel trapped here. Instead, watching dawn break over the forest from the wall-to-wall windows of what Kale called the war room, she felt something unexpected. Purpose. Coffee? Kyle appeared beside her, 2 mugs in hand, looking like he hadn't slept. From the maps and reports scattered across the massive table behind them, he probably hadn't. You're going to make yourself sick. Sarah took the mug anyway, their fingers brushing. Even that small contact sent warmth through the bond. I'll sleep when we've identified the threat. Very macho, very stupid. She turned to face him fully. When's the last time you ate? I had... He paused, thinking. Yesterday? Maybe? Sarah set down her coffee with deliberate care. Kitchen. Now. You're useless to anyone if you collapse. I don't take orders from... Your mate? She raised an eyebrow. Thought we were partners. Partners tell each other when they're being idiots. You're being an idiot. For a moment, Kyle looked ready to argue. Then he laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him since the attack, and the sound transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. You really are going to be trouble. Constantly. Sarah hooked her arm through his, ignoring the electric zing where they touched. Come on, Alpha King. Let's get some food in you before your guards stage an intervention. In the cabin's state-of-the-art kitchen, Sarah made eggs while Kale sat at the counter and watched her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. Instead, it felt right, domestic in a way that both terrified and steadied her. My mother used to make eggs like that, Kyle said quietly. Scrambled with cheese, slightly runny. Sarah glanced at him. He rarely mentioned his family. Past tense? She died 5 years ago. Cancer. His expression went distant. My father followed 6 months later. Grief, the doctors said. I think he just couldn't exist without her. That's how mate bonds work? Sarah asked, plating the eggs. One dies, the other follows? Not always, but often. Kyle accepted the plate with a nod of thanks. True mate bonds are intense, soul deep. My father used to say my mother was the reason he breathed. Sarah thought about that as she made her own plate. Sounds suffocating. Or liberating. Kyle met her gaze. Depending on the wolves. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus burst into the kitchen, tablet in hand, expression grim. Alpha. We've got something. They reconvened in the war room, where Marcus pulled up security footage on the main screen. This is from the estate's parking structure the night before the council meeting. Watch the timestamp. Sarah watched a figure in a hooded jacket approach a service entrance. Nothing remarkable until the person glanced up, just once, at a security camera. Counselor Reeves. She knew where the cameras were, Marcus said. Looked directly at one, like she wanted to be seen. But she's the one who warned us, Sarah protested. She sent that message about the dead counselors. Did she? Kyle was already typing, pulling up phone records. Or did someone using her phone? Horror dawned. You think she's dead too? I think someone very smart is tying up loose ends. Kale's jaw tightened as data scrolled across multiple screens. Reeves voted for our bond. She was also the oldest counselor, the most experienced. If she suspected who was really behind this, they'd eliminate her and use her death to further destabilize the council. Sarah moved closer to the screens, her nursing student brain accustomed to solving puzzles with incomplete information. But why tip us off first? Why send that message? To make us paranoid, a new voice said from the doorway. To make us suspect everyone. Vivian stood there in expensive athleisure, looking utterly out of place in the fortress. 2 of Kyle's guards flanked her, weapons drawn. She came to the perimeter asking for asylum, one guard explained. Claims she has information about the attacks. Kale's power flooded the room, and even Sarah felt the urge to bare her throat. "Give me one reason not to throw you in a cell." "Because my father's not the villain you think he is." Vivian's usual venom was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine fear. "And because whoever's behind this just killed him." Silence crashed through the room. Sarah found her voice first. "Counselor Ashford is dead?" "Poison, like the others. I found him this morning." Vivian's hands shook. He'd been investigating financials, tracking money movements between certain PAC accounts. He thought he'd found the connection, was planning to present evidence at the next council session. "What evidence?" Kyle demanded. "I don't know. It died with him." Vivian's green eyes, red-rimmed from crying, fixed on Sarah. "But he left me a message. He said to tell you that your parents weren't killed because of prophecy. They were killed because they discovered the territory's greatest corruption." Sarah's heart hammered. What corruption? "A shadow network. Someone, or multiple someones, have been siphoning resources from PAC territories for decades. Billions in wealth, all disappearing into accounts no one's been able to trace." Vivian's voice was steadier now, falling into what Sarah recognized as a coping mechanism. Facts over feelings. "Your parents found proof. That's why they died. That's why you were hidden." Kale was already moving, pulling up financial records. "And now someone's using our bond as a smokescreen to eliminate anyone else who might be getting close to the truth. 3 counselors dead, plus my father." Vivian counted on her fingers. All 4 were the oldest members, the ones with decades of institutional knowledge, the ones who might remember when the embezzlement started. Understanding crystallized in Sarah's mind with terrible clarity. It's not about the prophecy at all. It's about silence. Someone's using the chaos of our bond to commit murders they've probably been planning for years. "Cleaning house," Marcus agreed grimly. "But who benefits?" Sarah turned to Kyle. "If the old council is dead, who takes their seats?" The question hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds before the power died. Not just the lights, everything. Computers, backup generators, even the emergency lighting. The fortress went black and silent. "They're here," Kale growled. In the darkness, Sarah heard the sound of weapons being drawn. "Everyone to the safe room, now." "There is no safe room they don't already know about," Vivian said, and there was steel in her voice now. "They had my father's files, which means they have estate blueprints, security codes, everything." "Then we fight." Kael's hand found Sarah's in the darkness. "Together." The windows exploded inward. Wolves poured through, at least a dozen, maybe more, moving with military precision. Sarah pressed against Kael's side, cursing her suppressed wolf, cursing her uselessness. Marcus and the guards engaged immediately, the room erupting into snarls and violence. Kale Thornwood. A woman's voice cut through the chaos, and the fighting stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. "Stand down, and the girl lives. Resist, and you all die tonight." A figure materialized from the shadows, another counselor, one Sarah barely remembered from the meeting. Counselor Thorne, she thought. Young for a counselor, barely 40, with cold eyes and colder smile. "You?" Realization hit Kale like a physical blow. "You're the newest appointment. Took your position 6 months ago." "After my predecessor died in a convenient hunting accident." Thorne's smile widened. "I've been very patient, Kale." building my network, placing my people, waiting for the right moment to seize control. Your bond with this little nobody? She gestured dismissively at Sarah. Perfect timing. The old guard so busy debating prophecy and tradition that they never saw me eliminating them one by one. You killed my father. Vivian's voice was pure venom. I killed everyone who might expose my operations. Your father was actually a surprise. I hadn't realized he was clever enough to track the money. Thorn pulled out a gun, human weapon, unexpected and deadly. But loose ends are loose ends. She aimed at Sarah. Kyle moved faster than Sarah's eyes could track, putting himself between her and the barrel. You'll have to kill me first. I was planning to. Thorn's finger tightened on the trigger, and Sarah's wolf, dormant and bound for 23 years, exploded free. Later, she wouldn't remember the shift, wouldn't remember the binding that had held her wolf shattering like glass, wouldn't remember the transformation from woman to something else, something ancient and powerful. She would only remember the feeling, absolute fury that anyone would threaten her mate. Her wolf was massive, larger than any she'd seen, silver white with eyes that glowed like moonlight. Power rolled off her in waves that made even Thorn's trained killers back away. And when when her wolf roared, it wasn't a normal wolf sound. It was something older. Something that made the other wolves in the room drop to their bellies in submission. Thorn fired. The bullet never reached Cale. Sarah's wolf was there, taking the hit in her shoulder, ignoring the pain, jaws closing around the gun and crushing it like paper. Impossible, Thorn breathed. That binding should have held for years. You're not supposed to be able to... Sarah's wolf didn't let her finish. One massive paw sent Thorn flying across the room. Around them, the other attackers broke, fleeing through the shattered windows, their carefully laid plan dissolving in the face of something they couldn't explain. Marcus and the guards caught Thorn before she could escape. In the aftermath, as adrenaline faded and reality returned, Sarah felt her wolf recede. The shift back was agonizing, leaving her naked and shaking on the floor, Kael's jacket materializing around her shoulders. You're bleeding. His voice was rough with emotion. Sarah, you took a bullet. I'm fine. And miraculously, she was. The wound was already closing, healing at a speed that should have been impossible. What just happened? Your bloodline. Vivian spoke from where she stood over Thorn's restrained form. I did some research after the council meeting. The moon goddess's first children, your mother's lineage, they were said to have power that modern wolves lost over generations. Healing, strength, the ability to command through presence alone. The binding broke because the threat was real, Cale added, pulling Sarah close. Your wolf couldn't let me die. The mate bond overrode everything else. Sarah looked at Thorn, restrained and furious on the floor. Why? Why go through all this? Because the territories have been stagnant for centuries, Thorn spat, ruled by old wolves with old ideas. I would have brought progress, change, real power. But you, she glared at Sarah with pure hatred, you and your precious prophecy, your ancient bloodline, you represent everything that keeps us trapped in the past. No, Sarah said quietly, still cradled in Kael's arms. I represent the future you couldn't control. That's what you really hate. 3 months later, Sarah stood in a courtroom packed with wolves from every territory. The trial had taken weeks, unraveling Thorn's network, tracking the stolen billions, identifying every conspirator. 5 more counselors had been implicated, along with dozens of Pack Alphas who'd been siphoning resources for years. The territories were being rebuilt from the ground up. New council members, new laws, new transparency. And at the center of it all stood Sarah Blackwood, no longer packless, no longer hiding. She'd taken her parents' names, claimed her bloodline, and was using her ancient power not to rule, but to heal. She'd also gone back to nursing school, because being the Alpha King's mate didn't mean abandoning who she was. Kyle appeared at her side as the final verdict was read: life imprisonment for Thorn, asset seizure for all conspirators. Ready to go home? Which home? Sarah smiled up at him. The fortress? The estate? My apartment you keep trying to convince me to abandon? I was thinking our home. Kale pressed a set of keys into her hand. I may have bought a house. Halfway between the estate and your campus, with a library, a garden, and a study you can use for schoolwork. Sarah stared at the keys, then at him. You bought a house. I bought us a home. He cupped her face in his hands. The fortress is for security. The estate is for politics. But we deserve a place that's just ours, where you can be Sarah, the nursing student, and I can be Kyle, who makes terrible coffee, where the prophecy and the politics stay at the door. Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. You ridiculous, perfect man. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, Sarah kissed him, right there in the courtroom, in front of the territories, in front of everyone. The kiss was promise and acceptance and choice, because the prophecy hadn't chosen them for each other. They'd chosen themselves. When they finally broke apart, Kyle was grinning like an idiot, and the assembled wolves were cheering. So, Sarah said, twining her fingers through his, about that terrible coffee. I'm going to need to teach you. Not happening. That's what staff is for. Kyle. I'm the Alpha King. I don't need to know how to make coffee. You're my mate. You're learning to make coffee. Tyrant. Absolutely. Sarah leaned into him, breathing in pine and winter and home. Get used to it. As they left the courtroom hand in hand, neither noticed the ancient tome in the council archives updating itself, a prophecy fulfilled not through destiny, but through choice. 2 wolves marked by the moon shall rise, one hidden, one crowned beneath the skies. Together they'll shatter corruption's hold, and forge a new future from courage bold. The prophecy had been right all along, just not in the way anyone expected. The end.